I don't know if this ever happens to you guys, but it seems like everywhere I go, people are always saying to me, you're a good looking fella. Do you have a recommendation for a good starting backpacking tent? And I always say, I sure do. It's this one right here. What's up, you guys? I'm Matt, and this is the River Country Products Tent Trekker version 2.2, and it's the first real backpacking tent that I ever bought. And if you're thinking about getting into backpacking, then it's the one you should buy as well. Let's just get one thing out of the way right now. This is not the best tent out there, but it's perfect for somebody who's thinking about getting into backpacking. So if you're somebody who doesn't know if you want to become a backpacker or not, and you want to get a tent, this is the one you should get. And if you end up falling in love with backpacking like I did, you're almost certainly going to upgrade to a better tent at some point in the future. But even that's a good reason why you should get this one first, and I'll tell you why at the end of this video. Why should this be the very first tent you should buy? Let me give you 5 good reasons why I like this tent. First, this tent is super affordable. In a world where you can spend $300 to $600 on a backpacking tent, this thing's only $66 on Amazon right now, and it's got 4.6 stars with 989 reviews. I'll leave a link to this in the description below. Definitely go check it out. The second thing is, it's a good sized tent. It's just over 7 feet long and 5 feet wide and 42 inches tall. And you guys, I'm 6'1" and a little wider than most people, and I fit in here great. Me and my gear can fit in this tent no problem. And when River Country Products says this is a 2-person tent, they mean it. You can actually fit 2 people in here pretty comfortably. You can't fit 2 people and their gear though, which we'll talk about later. The third thing I love about this tent is that it's light-ish. This thing weighs in at 3 pounds 5 ounces, which is a far cry from some backpacking tents, which weigh less than a pound, but those things cost $500 to $600. At $66, the cost to weight ratio on this thing is pretty unbelievable. The fourth thing I love about this tent is that it's a trekking pole tent, which means you're gonna have to buy a pair of trekking poles if you wanna use this tent. How is that a pro? Well, I'll tell you, if you're just getting started in backpacking, do yourself a favor and absolutely get yourself a pair of trekking poles. It's going to make your first trip out so much more enjoyable. So a tent that forces you to get some trekking poles, I'm a big fan of that. The fifth thing I love about this tent is that it's super easy to set up. I could set the whole thing up in just a few minutes using only 8 stakes and a pair of trekking poles, and that's pretty nice. All right, now we gotta talk about the 3 things that I don't like about this tent. The first is that it's a single wall tent, meaning you're gonna get condensation inside this tent if you're camping on cooler evenings. It does have some flaps that you can open up. In fact, it's pretty well ventilated for a single wall tent. And whenever possible, I'll sleep with the screen door closed, but the main door of the tent open to really increase the ventilation. The second con on my list about this tent is that it absolutely must be seam sealed. Now, in all fairness, most backpacking tents need to be seam sealed, but it seems to really matter with this tent. So when you buy this thing, pick up a tube of seam sealant like this and make sure you spend the time to seal up all the seams on this tent. What you're probably gonna do is you're gonna do a practice run where you set this up before you go on your first trip. You're gonna do that, and when you do that, you're gonna use the seam sealant and seal up all the seams on the tent so that you don't get wet if it rains. And the third con with this tent is that there's no vestibule with it, meaning if there are 2 people sleeping in your tent, you're going to have to find somewhere else to store your gear in order to keep it dry if there's any chance of rain. Now, at the beginning of this video, I said that if you're gonna get into backpacking, you will almost certainly end up upgrading this tent. And I said that's a good reason to wanna buy this tent, and here's why. At only 66 bucks, this tent is so affordable that even after you upgrade, you're gonna just keep this one as a backpack, and it's gonna sit on your shelf. And now, whenever friends or family wanna go on a backpacking trip with you, you've got the perfect tent to loan them. At only 66 bucks, if they ruin it or break it or lose it, it's not that big of a deal, and so it's super easy to loan out to people who may want to get into backpacking just like you do. So check out the link in the description below to go check out this tent on Amazon. Pick up a tube of seam sealant while you're there and maybe some trekking poles if you don't have any, and get yourself into the mountains. I'll see you out there. So head on down to the description below and check out the link to this tent. Stinking plane.